It's always a good idea as a speaker to have a structure to hang your story on, a bit like scaffolding, so you know where you're going and you've got a sense of flow. Because when you as a speaker have an idea of where you're going, guess what? So does your audience. I'm going to share a few examples of different structures using the same basic story so you can see how things can flow. What I'm going to share in this video is called the Pixar storyboard version. I'm sure you've seen Pixar movies in your time, and they basically follow the same format, the same structure. And there are 6 points to it. We start off with once upon a time, every day, then one day, because of that, until finally. And that's the basis of every Pixar movie you will ever watch. I'm sure you've got some favorites. Go back and look at them again and see if you can pull out where the progression is. So I'm going to share with you my story of origin according to Pixar. Story is called 2-year-old logic driving adult decisions. You cannot be serious. Back in the 1960s, there's a family, an extended family of cousins playing in a suburban back garden. This was my grandparents' garden. Now, there were 4 cousins, 3 boys, and a very much younger little person, me, the only girl. We're out playing in the back garden with the dogs, and these are 2 very well-behaved standard poodles. By well-behaved, I mean they were Crufts show dogs. They were very well-behaved, well-trained. We were out playing, having a great time. Granny calls us in for 11sies, aka morning tea in the rest of the world, for our homemade lemonade and biscuits. Woof those down. The dogs had had their bones in their little 11sies, and we children were sent out to play again. Except the boys made it quite clear they didn't want anything to do with little Wendy. Or for one thing, she was a girl and she was much younger, and they didn't really want her playing in boys' things. What am I going to do? Thinks little Wendy. Oh no, I'll go and play with the dogs. But the dogs had bones. Their attention was on the bones. So this little 2-year-old's logic thought, if I take the bone away from them, I'm going to be the centre of attention. Parents, I think you can work out this did not end happily. My finger became the bone. I required surgery on my finger. And bear in mind the time we're talking about. This is back in the 60s. Parents were not allowed to stay with their children in hospital. My earliest memory is of the double doors closing, with the big circular windows. They were a very long way up for a little person. And me yelling and screaming, "Mommy!" And she didn't come for me. She couldn't. I didn't know that. All I knew as a 2-year-old was that my mum did not come for me. At that point, I made the decision that that meant my voice didn't matter. I didn't matter. It was a very early defining moment. I had no idea of what that belief would mean for the rest of my life. Fast forward a few years, and I became a speech pathologist. I trained to be a speech pathologist because having made that 2-year-old defining moment that my voice didn't matter, I thought, no, nobody else is going to experience this, not on my watch. So I became a speech pathologist and worked for almost 30 years, enabling other people to find their voice. I can advocate, and did, very vociferously on occasions, for my clients, but not for me. Don't forget, my voice doesn't matter. Then one day, I came home to find my husband dead in the chair. That was a shock. That was a review of identity required. because I hadn't stood up for myself in our marriage. I hadn't advocated for myself. Review of identity number 1. A few years later, I came to Australia, still as a speech pathologist, and worked here for a couple of years. And then the company that brought me over decided to let me go. Time for review identity number 2. I'm now no longer a wife, a carer, or a speech pathologist. Where does that leave me? Remember, my voice doesn't matter? Good question. Where does that leave me? Well, with the help of some coaching training, I became a speech coach, a speaker coach, which is what I do now. I'm still supporting other people to get their voice out there. Where does that leave me? My voice doesn't matter, remember? Until recently, with the help of a coach, I am working through my issues so that my voice does matter, and I'm sharing my own personal message to the world. So the point of telling you all of this is that if you are harboring very early beliefs that are no longer serving you, you have the ability to choose whether to continue with that unresourceful belief, which, let's face it, has kept you going all this time and has been part of your identity. Or you can choose to put that to one side and pick up and adopt a new identity, a new belief, a new way of thinking. So when people say to me, oh, you've been speaking all your life, you wouldn't understand what it's like to stand up and talk about yourself. I do. So 2-year-old logic, driving adult decisions, no longer.